I never thought I'd be the woman who throws away a 25-year marriage for another man. But here I am at 46, broke and alone in a tiny apartment while my kids refuse to speak to me. 3 years ago, I made what I thought was the bravest choice of my life, leaving my husband for a real man who made me feel alive again. Ryan noticed everything about me that my husband had stopped seeing. He brought me coffee, remembered my stories, and looked into my eyes when I spoke. The passion between us seemed worth any sacrifice. How could I have known that my dream man would drain my bank accounts, wreck my car while drunk, and leave me with nothing but regret? Now I watch from a distance as my ex-husband rebuilds his life without me. I never thought I'd be the woman who throws away a 25-year marriage for another man, but here I am, broke, alone in a crappy apartment, and my kids barely talk to me anymore. I'm Vivian, 46, and 3 years ago, I made what I thought was the bravest decision of my life, but turned out to be the dumbest mistake ever. Guillaume and I met in our 20s at a company picnic. He worked in accounting. I was in customer relations. Back then, he was this confident guy with big dreams who made me laugh until my stomach hurt. We got married after dating for 2 years, had our first baby a year later, and before I knew it, we had 3 kids and a mortgage in the suburbs. But somewhere along the way, Guillaume changed. Or maybe I just started seeing him differently. After 25 years of the same routine, him coming home, eating dinner, watching TV, then going to bed, I felt like I was suffocating. He stopped noticing me years ago. I'd get a new haircut and he wouldn't even look up from his phone. I'd buy a new outfit and he'd just ask how much it cost. Meanwhile, all my friends were posting about date nights and surprise gifts from their husbands. Not that Guillaume was a bad guy. He paid the bills, never cheated, and showed up for the kids' events. But is that really all marriage is supposed to be? I started dreading coming home after work. Our house felt like a museum of a life I didn't choose anymore. All those family photos on the wall started to feel like they were mocking me, like they were showing some other woman's life, not mine. The kids were grown. Olivier was 28 and living in Seattle. Amelia was 26 and engaged, and Theo was 23 and finishing college. They didn't need me hovering around anymore. And Guillaume and I barely talked about anything real. It was all just logistics. Who's picking up groceries? Did you pay the electric bill? The roof needs fixing. That's when I met Ryan at work. He transferred to our department from the main office, and right away, there was this energy between us. He'd stop by my desk to ask questions he definitely knew the answers to. He'd bring me coffee without asking, and remember exactly how I liked it. We started eating lunch together, and for the first time in forever, someone was actually listening to me. Ryan would look me in the eyes when I talked, not glance at his watch or phone like Guillaume always did. I told myself we were just friends, but deep down, I knew it was more. Ryan made me feel alive again, like I was desirable, interesting, worth paying attention to. He'd text me these sweet messages during the day, asking how my meeting went, or sending me a funny meme that reminded him of something I'd said. When was the last time Guillaume had done anything like that? I honestly couldn't remember. I started making more effort with my appearance, buying new clothes, getting my hair done regularly, even losing those stubborn 15 pounds I'd been complaining about for years. Guillaume barely noticed, just commented once that the credit card bill was higher than usual. But Ryan noticed everything. He'd compliment my earrings or say my hair looked pretty when I wore it down. Simple things that shouldn't have meant so much but did because I was so starved for that kind of attention. I started making excuses to work late just so Ryan and I could talk without coworkers around. We'd sit in the break room after everyone left, and I'd tell him things I hadn't told anyone in years. My dreams of traveling that never happened. How I sometimes felt invisible in my own home. How I wondered if this was all life had for me. He'd share too. His failed marriage, his hopes of starting over, how he'd never met someone he connected with like me. The first time he kissed me was after a company happy hour. We'd both had a couple of drinks and he walked me to my car. I knew I should pull away, but I didn't want to. That kiss made me feel 20 years younger. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling. When I walked in, Guillaume was asleep on the couch, the TV still on. I stood there looking at him, thinking about how Ryan made me feel versus the emptiness. I felt looking at my husband of 25 years. That night, I slept in the guest room, claiming I didn't want to wake Guillaume. It was the first of many lies. Our emotional affair turned physical a few weeks later. I told Guillaume I was attending a work conference for the weekend, but I was really in a hotel downtown with Ryan. I should have felt guilty, but all I felt was relief, like I could finally breathe again. Ryan looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He couldn't keep his hands off me. He wanted to know everything about me. With him, I wasn't just somebody's wife or somebody's mom. I was Vivian again. I started comparing everything Guillaume did or didn't do to Ryan. Guillaume's steady, predictable nature that once made me feel secure now seemed boring and passionless. His practical approach to everything felt stifling. Ryan was spontaneous, romantic, and made me feel like I was the center of his universe. I convinced myself that what Ryan and I had was real love, the kind people write songs about, and what Guillaume and I had was just comfortable habit. After 2 months of sneaking around, I couldn't take the double life anymore. I decided I deserved to be happy. Why should I settle for a lukewarm marriage when I could have passionate love? So I did what I never imagined I would do. I sat Guillaume down and told him I wanted a divorce. The look on his face still haunts me sometimes. When I told Guillaume I wanted out, he didn't even yell. He just sat there with this blank look, asking if there was someone else. I tried to be gentle about it, but I told him yes. I'd met someone who made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. He asked me if I would reconsider, try marriage counseling, take some time to think about our family, but my mind was made up. I told him I wasn't in love with him anymore and hadn't been for a long time. That part wasn't completely true. I just needed to say something that would make it easier to leave. Things got ugly after a weekend when I disappeared from Friday to Sunday with Ryan. I deserved that little getaway after all the stress. But when I came home to pack more clothes, Guillaume completely lost it. He told me not to come back, that I could get my things another time. But the house wasn't my home anymore. I was shocked. After 25 years together, he was just throwing me out. But honestly, it made things easier. I moved in with Ryan that same day. I tried to keep things civil for the divorce. I wanted it done quickly so Ryan and I could start our new life together. So I agreed to pretty much everything Guillaume wanted. He kept the house, his entire pension, and most of his 401k. My friends told me I was being stupid, that I deserved half of everything after 25 years. But I didn't care about money then. Ryan made good money and we were in love. Material things seemed so unimportant compared to finally being happy. The kids were another story. I wasn't prepared for how they would react. Olivier, my oldest, told me he was done with me if I chose this guy over his dad. He actually used those words, like Ryan was some random nobody. Amelia cried and asked me how I could break up our family. Even Theo, who's always been my easygoing one, shut me out. I tried explaining that sometimes people grow apart, that I deserved happiness too, but they weren't hearing it. They'd always seen me as just their mom, not a woman with needs and desires. I figured they'd come around eventually once they saw how happy Ryan made me. The divorce was finalized in early 2022, and for a while, everything with Ryan was amazing. We took weekend trips, went out dancing, and stayed up talking about everything and nothing. Sex was incredible, passionate, and frequent, like it hadn't been with Guillaume in more than a decade. Ryan would surprise me with flowers for no reason. We'd take spontaneous days off work just to be together. He made me feel young again, desirable. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living instead of just existing. At daughter Amelia's birthday dinner, which I attended alone since Ryan wasn't invited, my kids were civil but distant. Amelia thanked me for her gift, but there was no warmth in her eyes. Olivier barely acknowledged me, and Theo spent most of the evening on his phone. I kept telling myself this was temporary, that they just needed time to adjust. When I tried to show Amelia pictures of the weekend trip Ryan and I had taken to the coast, she cut me off. "Mom, I don't want to see your vacation photos with the man who broke up our family." Her words stung, but I still believed she'd eventually understand that I was happier now, that this was better for everyone in the long run. On my way home, I called Ryan to vent about how difficult the evening had been. He was sympathetic at first, telling me my kids were adults who should want their mother to be happy. Then he suggested we open a bottle of wine and forget about it, which was exactly what I needed to hear. That night, as Ryan and I sat on the balcony of his apartment, now our apartment, drinking wine and looking at the city lights, I felt a moment of perfect contentment. I had made the right choice. This was the life I was meant to live, not the suffocating routine I'd endured for 25 years. At least, that's what I told myself. But around 4 months after the divorce, reality started creeping in. The first red flag was Ryan's drinking. During our affair, I'd only seen him have a few social drinks. Now I realized he drank every night, sometimes starting as soon as he got home from work. When I mentioned it, he'd get defensive, saying he worked hard and deserved to relax. The second issue was money. Ryan was always buying rounds for friends, ordering expensive electronics we didn't need, taking me to fancy restaurants multiple times a week. I started worrying about our finances. But when I brought it up, he accused me of being uptight like my ex. Meanwhile, I was getting increasingly desperate about my relationship with my kids. Olivier wouldn't take my calls at all. Amelia would talk to me occasionally, but always ended our conversations upset. She told me Guillaume was healing and that everyone was worried about me. I hated that. The idea that I was someone to be worried about, like I'd lost my mind. Thea would respond to my texts with one-word answers, if at all. I missed them terribly, but I still believed they'd eventually accept Ryan and my new life. Then Guillaume completely blindsided me. 6 months after our divorce, Amelia let slip that he was dating someone. Some friend of his sister's, also divorced. I was shocked and, if I'm being honest, jealous. How could he move on so quickly when we'd been together for 25 years? I tried telling myself I didn't care. After all, I had Ryan. But it bothered me more than it should have. I kept picturing this woman in my house, using my kitchen, sleeping in what used to be my bed. The real blow came when Olivier got engaged and I found out through Facebook. Not even a phone call. When I called to congratulate him, he told me bluntly that I wasn't invited to the wedding. I was devastated. I called Guillaume, begging him to talk to our son, to make him understand that I was still his mother. Guillaume just said, "This is between you and Olivier. You made your choice, Vivian." Then he hung up. I cried for days, but Ryan had little sympathy. He said my kids were adults being manipulated by their father, and I should just give them time. That's when things really started falling apart with Ryan. His drinking got worse. He totaled my car driving home drunk from a golf outing with his buddies. Then I discovered he'd been dipping into my 401k money to cover his own credit card debt. When I confronted him, he promised to pay me back, swore he'd cut back on drinking, said he'd get help. I wanted to believe him because the alternative, admitting I'd made a catastrophic mistake, was too painful to face. But promises don't mean much from someone who can't even remember making them the next morning. The breaking point came when I realized Ryan had been using my credit cards without asking. I confronted him about a $2,000 charge for a golf membership, and he exploded, saying I was controlling him, just like his ex-wife had. That night, He didn't come home until 3 a.m., stumbling drunk and unapologetic. As I watched him pass out, on our bed, still in his clothes, I had my first moment of doubt. This wasn't what I'd pictured when I'd blown up my life for him. Ryan's behavior became more erratic. He'd be loving one minute and cruel the next. My dream man was turning into a nightmare, and I had nowhere to turn. My friends from my married. Life had mostly sided with Guillaume. My kids barely spoke to me. I was working extra hours to cover our expenses since Ryan had been between jobs for 3 months. One night, after Ryan passed out on the couch, I sat alone in our small apartment, bathroom, and finally admitted the truth to myself. I had destroyed everything good in my life for a fantasy. The passionate, attentive man I'd fallen for didn't really exist. Or maybe he did, but only for as long as it took to lure me away from my family. Either way, I was trapped in a relationship with an alcoholic who was bleeding me dry financially and emotionally. In desperation, I called Guillaume. It had been over a year since the divorce. I thought maybe time had softened his anger. I told him I'd made a terrible mistake and asked if I could come home. The silence on the other end of the line should have prepared me for what came next, but it didn't. Guillaume unleashed years of built-up rage. He told me exactly what he thought of me as a person, as a wife, as a mother. He said the house was no longer my home and never would be again. He told me to never contact him again except about the kids. Then he hung up. I stayed with Ryan for another 6 months after that call, paralyzed by shame and the fear of being alone. But when he spent the last of my savings on a gambling trip with his friends, something in me finally snapped. I packed my things while he was at work and left. Now I'm living in a dingy one-bedroom apartment, driving a used car that breaks down weekly, and working a job I'm overqualified for just to make rent. My life has become unrecognizable. Last week, Amelia told me that Olivier and his wife are expecting a baby. I should be excited about becoming a grandmother, but all I feel is grief, knowing I probably won't be allowed to meet my own grandchild. I heard through mutual friends that Guillaume and his girlfriend are planning a trip to Hawaii this summer, the trip he and I had always talked about taking once Theo finished college. Some days I tell myself it's not fair, that a mistake, even a huge one, shouldn't cost someone everything, that my kids should forgive me because I'm their mother, that Guillaume should have fought harder for our marriage. But in my honest moments, usually late at night when I can't sleep, I know the truth. I didn't just make a mistake. I made a choice, over and over again, day after day. I chose excitement over commitment, fantasy over reality, selfishness over family, and now I'm living with the consequences. I find myself staring at old family photos a lot these days. There's one from Theo's high school graduation that I keep on my nightstand. We're all smiling. Me, Guillaume, and the kids. We looked so happy. Were we really, or was I already restless? Already looking for an escape? I can't even remember anymore. The past has become a blur of contradictions. Was my marriage as empty as I convinced myself it was when I met Ryan, or did I rewrite history to justify what I wanted to do? My therapist, yes, I finally started. Seeing one, says I was having a midlife crisis. That I was afraid of growing older, afraid of never feeling passion again, afraid of disappearing into the background of my own life. She's probably right, but knowing why I did what I did doesn't fix anything. Understanding doesn't bring my family back. Last month I ran into Guillaume at the grocery store. 3 years after our divorce, and my heart still jumped when I saw him. He looked good, better than I remembered. He'd lost weight, gotten a new haircut. He was with her, Diane, his girlfriend. They were laughing about something when they turned down my aisle. The moment he saw me, his face changed. Not anger anymore, just nothing. Like I was a stranger. He nodded politely and guided Diane in the other direction. She looked back with curiosity. I wonder what he's told her about me. Probably everything. Probably the truth. Amelia's wedding is next month. She invited me, which feels like more than I deserve. She made it clear that I'd be seated separately from the family, that I shouldn't bring a date, that I shouldn't expect to be in many photos. I agreed to all her terms immediately. I'd stand in the parking lot and watch through a window if that's what it took to see my daughter get married. Olivier won't talk to me at the wedding, she warned, and I'll only see Theo at the reception. Guillaume will be there with Diane. I'll be alone. It's going to be awkward and painful, and probably humiliating, but I'll be there with a smile on my face because what other choice do I have? Sometimes when I can't sleep, I play this game where I imagine what my life would be like if I'd never met Ryan, if I'd talked to Guillaume about feeling unseen instead of looking for validation elsewhere, if I'd put that energy into rekindling what we had instead of burning it all down. I'd still be in my home. I'd be helping Amelia plan her wedding. I'd be getting ready to be a grandmother with Guillaume by my side. I'd have a financial future instead of being one car repair away from total disaster. I'd have my dignity. I'd have my family's respect. My mom used to say, "The grass is greener where you water it." I didn't understand that until it was too late. I was so sure the problem was Guillaume, our marriage, our life. I convinced myself that Ryan was the solution when he was really just an escape. I didn't water my own grass. I jumped the fence for someone else's, only to discover it was actually just dead weeds painted green. Ryan texted me last week, said he misses me, that he's getting help for his drinking, that he wants me back. I deleted the message without responding. Some lessons you only need to learn once. But it got me thinking about second chances. Guillaume got his, a new relationship, a chance to do things differently. My kids are building their own lives. Even Ryan thinks he deserves another shot. What about me? Do I get a second chance? Or is this it? The small life in this small apartment, paying for my mistakes until the day I die? I've been thinking about moving, starting fresh somewhere new, maybe a different city where nobody knows me or what I did. It feels like running away. And maybe it is. But staying here, being reminded every day of what I lost, seeing Guillaume move on while I'm stuck in this purgatory of my own making, it's slowly killing me. My sister thinks I should do it. She's the only family member who still talks to me regularly. She says time and distance might help heal the relationships with my kids, that they might be able to see me as a person again, not just the mom who broke their dad's heart. The thing about being the villain in your own story is that you don't realize it until it's too late to change the ending. When I was sneaking around with Ryan, lying to Guillaume, dismissing my kids' feelings, I thought I was the hero, a woman brave enough to follow her heart, to choose passion over complacency. It's only now, alone with the consequences, that I see the truth. There's nothing brave about betraying the people who love you. There's nothing heroic about putting your desires above everyone else's needs. Some nights I dream about that moment, sitting Guillaume down to tell him I want out. In the dream, I say something different. I tell him I'm unhappy, that I feel invisible, that I need more from our marriage. I ask for counseling instead of a divorce. I confess to inappropriate feelings for someone at work, but say I want to recommit to us. In the dream, Guillaume reaches for my hand, tells me he's been taking me for granted. Promises we'll find our way back to each other. I wake up from those dreams with wet cheeks, the ghost of relief and regret mingling in my chest. When I visit my therapist, she talks a lot about forgiveness. Forgiving Guillaume, forgiving Ryan, forgiving myself. The first two feel possible, eventually. The last one seems impossible. How do you forgive yourself for ruining your own life? For hurting the people you were supposed to protect? For throwing away something precious for something worthless? She says it starts with accepting that you're human, that humans make terrible mistakes, that making a bad choice doesn't make you a bad person. I'm not there yet. I think about calling Guillaume sometimes, not to ask for another chance. I know, that door is closed forever. But just to tell him I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not the manipulative apologies I tried in the beginning when I thought I could fix everything. I want to tell him that he deserved better than what I gave him. That he was a good husband, a good father. That the failure was mine, not his. But what right do I have to ask for that conversation? To put my need for absolution on him after everything else I've taken? So I don't call. Some messes can't be cleaned up. Some debts can't be repaid. Amelia says the baby is due in October. A little boy, my first grandchild. She hasn't said whether I'll be allowed to meet him. I've started knitting a blanket just in case. Blue and white soft yarn that won't irritate newborn skin. I tangle the yarn at least once every session, have to undo rows because I've miscounted stitches. But I keep going. It feels important somehow to make something with my hands for this new life that's coming, even if I might never get to give it to him. My therapist would probably call it a hope project. She'd be right. All I know for sure is that if I could go back, I'd do everything differently. Not just because I ended up alone and broke, though that's certainly part of it, but because I finally understand what I took for granted. What looked like a boring, predictable life was actually a foundation. Safety, stability, trust, the steady accumulation of memories and inside jokes and small kindnesses. The knowledge that someone will always be there, not because you make their heart race, but because they've chosen you, day after day, year after year. That's the real love story. Not Ryan and his empty passion. The real love was there all along, and I was too blind to see it. I went to Amelia's wedding last weekend. I'd spent weeks agonizing over what to wear, settling on a navy blue dress that was elegant but understated. I didn't want to draw attention to myself or away from my daughter. The ceremony was beautiful. Amelia looked radiant, and her husband seems like a good man who truly loves her. I sat in the back row, alone, just as we'd agreed. I watched Guillaume walk our daughter down the aisle, saw the pride in his eyes, the joy. That should have been us together, sharing that moment as parents. At the reception, I kept to myself mostly, though a few old friends came by to say hello. Their politeness felt like pity. I saw Guillaume and Diane dancing. They moved well together, comfortable, happy. He never danced with me like that. Or maybe he tried and I never noticed. It's hard to remember now what was real and what I made up to justify my choices. Theo stopped by my table briefly. He was cordial but distant. He's graduating with his master's degree next month. I asked if I could attend the ceremony. He hesitated before saying he'd think about it. It was more than I expected. A small mercy. Olivier was true to his word. He didn't acknowledge me at all, steering his pregnant wife away whenever they came near my table. I don't blame him. I understand his anger. But it still cuts deep, being treated like a stranger by your own child. As I was leaving, Amelia hugged me. A brief embrace, but real. She whispered, "Thank you for coming, Mom." 4 simple words that felt like salvation. Maybe not forgiveness yet, but a tiny crack in the wall between us. I held on to that moment all the way back to my empty apartment. The blanket for my grandchild is finished. I wrapped it carefully and mailed it to Olivier and his wife with a short note congratulating them. I didn't ask to see the baby. I didn't make any requests. Just wanted them to know I was thinking of them. I don't know if they'll use it or if it will end up in a donation bin. Either way, I needed to send it. My lease is up next month, and I've decided to take my sister's advice. I'm moving to Portland. It's far enough away to feel like a fresh start, but close enough that I can drive back for important events if I'm ever invited. I found a slightly better apartment there and a job with a small marketing firm that actually uses my skills. The ZAE pay isn't great, but it's an improvement. Small steps forward. I saw my therapist for the last time yesterday. She said she's proud of the work I've done, facing my mistakes instead of running from them. I'm not sure I deserve that pride. but I'm trying. She suggested I keep journaling, keep processing. She also recommended finding a support group in Portland, people who have been through similar situations. I might do that. It would be nice to talk to people who understand without judgment. The night before leaving, I drove past our old house. Guillaume's house now. I didn't stop, just slowed down to look. The maple tree in the front yard that we planted when Olivier was born is huge now, spreading its branches over the roof. Guillaume has painted the shutters a different color. There's a new mailbox, little changes that make it feel less like the place where I spent 25 years of my life. That's good, I think. It should be different. It belongs to a different life now. My sister helped me pack up my small apartment. There wasn't much to take, which made the process quick, if not painless. As we were loading the last boxes into my car, she hugged me tight and made me promise to call when I reach Portland. "This isn't an ending," she said. "It's just a new chapter." I want to believe her. I need to believe her. The drive to Portland was long and quiet. I had plenty of time to think about the past 3 years and all the decisions that led me here. The affair with Ryan feels like something that happened to someone else, a fever dream that took over my life. But it wasn't. It was me. My choices. My selfishness. I need to own that. My new apartment is small but clean, with big windows that let in a lot of light. It's on the 3rd floor of an older building with character, hardwood floors that creak in certain spots, a tiny balcony just big enough for a chair where I can have my morning coffee. It's not much, but it's mine. A place to rebuild from. My first week at the new job went well. My coworkers seem nice, though I'm keeping relationships professional for now. I'm not ready for friendships. I'm still figuring out who I am post-disaster. What's left of the woman I used to be before Ryan, before the divorce, before I lost everything that mattered. I joined that support group my therapist recommended. It meets Wednesday nights in a community center downtown. There are 12 of us, men and women of different ages who all made choices that cost them their families, some through affairs, others through addiction or neglect. We're all at different stages of recovery, of rebuilding. It helps to know I'm not alone, that others have walked this path before me and found their way back to something resembling peace. I've started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends. The shelter director doesn't care about my past. She just needs someone to walk dogs and clean kennels. The animals don't judge me either. There's something healing about caring for creatures who need me, who are genuinely happy to see me when I arrive. It's a small purpose, but it's something. Amelia called yesterday. She thanked me for the wedding gift, a silver picture frame I could barely afford but wanted her to have. Then she told me Olivier's wife had the baby 2 weeks early, a healthy boy they named Lucas, 7 pounds, 8 ounces. I'm a grandmother now. She sent a picture to my phone. He has Guillaume's nose and chin. I stared at that tiny face for hours after we hung up, trying to memorize every detail. I asked Amelia if Olivier had received the blanket. She hesitated before telling me yes, they got it. His wife thought it was beautiful. Olivier didn't say anything when they opened it, but they're using it in the nursery. Another small crack in the wall. Another reason to keep going. I found a grief counselor here in Portland, someone who specializes in loss that isn't death but feels like it. Family estrangement, she calls it. She says my feelings are normal, that the path to healing isn't linear, that reconnection with my children is possible but might not look like what I expect. I have to be patient. I have to respect their boundaries. I have to accept that forgiveness may come in small increments over years, not all at once in a dramatic moment. One step at a time, one day at a time. That's my mantra now. I got a letter from Guillaume last week. The sight of his handwriting on the envelope made my heart race. Inside was a short note and a check for $30,000. Your portion of the house equity, the note said. I should have given this to you during the divorce. No mention of why he changed his mind, No personal message, just his signature. At the bottom. I stared at that check for a long time, tears streaming down my face. Not because of the money, though God knows I need it, but because it was the right thing to do, and he did it, even after everything. I used part of the money to pay off my credit card debt and the rest I put into savings. A small financial cushion I never thought I'd have again. When I wrote to thank him, I kept it simple. No emotional pleas, no reminders of the past. Just gratitude for his fairness. I don't expect a response. I don't deserve one. Theo called to invite me to his graduation ceremony. It was an awkward conversation, both of us carefully avoiding certain topics, but he wants me there. I'll sit apart from the family again, of course. Guillaume will be there with Diane, but I'll get to watch my youngest child receive his master's degree. I'll get to hug him afterward, tell him how proud I am. It's more than I dared hope for. I've been thinking a lot about what real love looks like. Not the flashy kind that burns hot and fast, but the kind that endures. The kind I had, and threw away. Guillaume's love wasn't perfect, neither was mine. We grew comfortable, took each other for granted. We stopped seeing each other. But underneath all that was something solid, something real. A foundation built over decades that I mistook for a prison. The irony is that I left because I felt invisible, yet I never tried to make myself seen. I never told Guillaume how lonely I felt in our marriage. I never gave him the chance to change, to meet me halfway. I just found someone who made me feel desired for a little while and convinced myself it was love. I met someone in my support group who did the same thing 5 years ago. She's rebuilding her relationship with her daughter now. She says it takes time, consistency, humility. No defensiveness, no expectations, just steady presence and respect for boundaries. I'm trying to follow her example. I send cards for birthdays and holidays. Brief, loving messages with no pressure for response. I acknowledge their feelings without making excuses for my behavior. Small seeds planted in hopes of someday harvesting reconciliation. The animal shelter offered me a part-time paid position. It's just weekends, coordinating volunteers, but it feels good to be trusted with responsibility again. To be seen as someone capable and reliable. The dogs know me now. They wag their tails when I walk in, eager for walks and treats and attention. There's a 3-legged Labrador named Charlie who's become my special project. No one wants to adopt an older dog with special needs, but I see his value, his patience, his capacity for joy despite everything he's been through. We're kindred spirits in a way. Olivier sent a text after Lucas turned 3 months old. Just a new photo, no message. But he sent it directly to me, not through Amelia. Progress. The baby is smiling in the picture, chubby and beautiful. I printed it out and put it on my refrigerator. My grandson. A continuation of my family, even if I'm at the margins now. I met a woman at the shelter who's become something of a friend. Patricia. She's in her 60s, a widow with grown children scattered across the country. She doesn't know about my past, and I'm not ready to tell her. But we get coffee sometimes. After our shifts, talk about books we're reading, movies we've seen. Normal conversation that doesn't revolve around my mistakes. It's refreshing to be known as I am now, not as I was then. I went back for Theo's graduation. It was a quick trip. Just 2 days. The ceremony was lovely, and he seemed genuinely happy to see me afterward. We had lunch together before I drove back to Portland. Just the two of us. He told me about his new job in Chicago, his girlfriend, his plans for the future. I mostly listened, soaking in the gift of his willingness to share his life with me, even briefly. I saw Guillaume and Diane at the ceremony, of course. They were polite, distant. Olivier was there too, with his wife and the baby. He didn't speak to me, but he didn't avoid me either. We existed in the same space. Without drama, that's something. Amelia calls more regularly now. Short conversations usually, but real ones. She's thinking about having children soon. She asks about my job, my apartment, my life in Portland. She doesn't talk about the past, and neither do I. We're building something new from the ashes of what I destroyed. It's fragile, this new relationship, but it's there. The holidays are coming up. I won't be invited to family gatherings. I know that. I've accepted it. I'll volunteer at the shelter on Christmas Day, giving the regular staff time with their families. Patricia invited me to join her for Christmas Eve dinner. I said yes. It won't be the same as being with my children, but it won't be the crushing loneliness of last year either. My therapist says grief changes over time. It doesn't necessarily diminish, but it transforms. The sharp, constant pain becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you. I think I'm starting to understand what she means. I still feel the loss every day, but it no longer paralyzes me. I can function. I can find moments of peace, even joy, small victories. I wonder sometimes if I'll ever have another romantic relationship, if I'll ever trust myself enough to let someone in again. Not now. I'm not ready. Maybe not ever. But I've stopped defining myself solely by my worst mistake. I'm more than what I did to my family. I'm trying to be more. I started painting again recently. Nothing serious, just watercolors on small canvases. Landscapes mostly. The Columbia River, Mount Hood in the distance, the bridges of Portland. I was good at it once before marriage and children filled my days. It feels good to create something, to lose myself in color and form for a few hours at a time. There's a quote I keep on my bathroom mirror. The only way out is through. I'm trying to live by those words. No shortcuts, no escapes, just the hard work of facing each day with as much grace as I can muster, accepting the consequences of my actions, and hoping that someday I'll feel whole again. Guillaume emailed me last month. Formal, brief, but not unkind. Lucas is being baptized in June. Olivier and his wife would like me to attend if I'm willing to travel back. Not as a grandmother of honor or anything official. Just present, in the background. It was Guillaume who asked them to include me, Amelia told me later. A peace offering of sorts. An acknowledgement that whatever happened between us, I'm still the children's mother, Lucas's grandmother. I cried when I read that email. Tears of gratitude, of relief, of cautious hope. I wrote back immediately to say yes, of course I'll be there. Another small step forward. Another reason to keep going. I returned to my old hometown for Lucas's baptism. The church was the same one where all 3 of my children had been baptized, where Amelia had gotten married. Walking through those doors felt like stepping back in time, memories washing over me in waves. I sat in the back row again, humble, grateful just to be included. Lucas wore the same christening gown that Olivier had worn, that Guillaume's mother had made by hand. A family tradition I thought I'd be excluded from forever. I watched my son hold his baby boy, so gentle, so proud. His wife smiled at me across the church when they entered. Not warmth exactly, but acknowledgement. Progress. After the ceremony, there was a small reception at Olivier and his wife's home. I hesitated at the door, unsure if my invitation extended that far, but Amelia saw me and waved me in. "Come on, Mom. Lucas wants to meet his grandmother properly," she said. I walked in on shaky legs, feeling like an intruder in my son's home. Guillaume was there with Diane, of course, looking comfortable and at ease as the patriarch of the family. When our eyes met, he nodded. Civil. That was all I could expect, all I deserved. But then something unexpected happened. As I stood awkwardly near the door, Guillaume approached me, Diane beside him. "Would you like something to drink, Vivian?" he asked. Such a simple question, such a normal courtesy. But it opened a door I thought was permanently closed. "Yes. Thank you," I said, my voice barely steady. Water would be nice. While Guillaume went to get my drink, Diane stayed. I've heard a lot about you, she said. Not accusatory, just matter of fact. I'm sure you have, I replied, bracing for judgment. She smiled slightly. People make mistakes. Life goes on. Simple words, but they nearly undid me. This woman who had every reason to see me as the villain was offering me grace I hadn't earned. Guillaume returned with my water, and then, miracle of miracles, Olivier approached with Lucas in his arms. Mom, he said formally, would you like to hold your grandson? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears threatening to spill over. He placed Lucas in my arms carefully, showing me how to support his head even though I remembered from when my own children were babies. Lucas looked up at me with curious eyes, Guillaume's eyes. I smiled down at him, this innocent child who knew nothing of the history that had nearly kept us apart. He's beautiful, I whispered. Thank you for letting me be here. Olivier nodded stiffly. Amelia thinks it's important for him to know his grandmother. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a beginning. After the reception, Amelia walked me to my car. That wasn't so bad, was it? She asked. It was more than I hoped for, I admitted. She looked at me for a long moment. Dad suggested inviting you. He said Lucas should have his whole family around him. I couldn't hold back the tears then. Guillaume is a good man. He always was. Yes, Amelia agreed. He is. The unspoken contrast hung between us. I'm trying to be better, I said quietly. She squeezed my hand. I know, Mom. We see that. We. A small word that meant everything. Back in Portland, my life continued its quiet rebuilding. My part-time job at the animal shelter became full-time when the coordinator position opened up. Better pay, more responsibility. I adopted Charlie, the three-legged lab. He keeps me company in my small apartment, greets me with enthusiastic joy when I come home each day. Uncomplicated love I don't have to earn. Amelia calls weekly now, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to send me new photos of Lucas. Theo visits occasionally when business brings him to the West Coast. He stayed in my guest room last month rather than a hotel. We stayed up late talking, really talking. He asked me about Ryan, about what happened. He wanted to understand. I told him the truth, all of it. The loneliness in my marriage that I never addressed, the intoxication of feeling seen and desired again, the fantasy I built that came crashing down, the desperation at the end. Why didn't you tell Dad how you were feeling? He asked. Before Ryan? A simple question with a complicated answer. Pride, maybe. Fear. I didn't want to admit I was unhappy, because that felt like failure. And then when Ryan came along, it seemed easier to start fresh than fix what was broken. But it wasn't easier in the end, Theo observed. No, I agreed. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, living with the consequences. He was quiet for a moment. You hurt Dad badly, you know. I know. If I could take it back, I would. You can't, he said, not unkindly. But you can go forward differently. Wise words from my youngest. When did he grow up so much? Olivier started sending me texts directly, not just through Amelia. Brief updates about Lucas, a photo here and there. He called on my birthday, put the phone on speaker so Lucas could talk to me, just babbling baby sounds that made my heart swell. Baby steps. Appropriate, I suppose, with a baby involved. Patricia, my friend from the shelter, has become a regular part of my life. We have dinner together most Fridays, sometimes with other friends from her church. She knows about my past now. I finally told her over coffee one rainy afternoon. I expected judgment, but instead received compassion. Everyone has a past, she said. It's what you do with your future that matters. She invited me to her church. I went, mostly to please her, but found unexpected comfort in the rituals, the community, the message of redemption. I'm not suddenly religious, but I've gone back a few times. It's nice to be part of something larger than myself, to be reminded that grace exists in the world. Guillaume emailed me again, more personal this time. He's retiring next year, selling the house to move into something smaller with Diane. He wanted to know if there was anything I left behind that I still wanted, items I'd abandoned in my rush to leave with Ryan. I wrote back thanking him for asking. There were a few things, I admitted. My grandmother's recipe box, the quilt my mother made for our wedding, photo albums from when the kids were small, things I hadn't felt entitled to ask for when I left. He replied that I could come get them whenever I was in town next. Said I should coordinate with Amelia. The house would be on the market soon, but no rush. His email ended with, "Take care, Vivian." Not warm, but not cold either. Neutral. Civil. A vast improvement from where we'd been. I'm going back next month. Amelia invited me to stay with her and her husband rather than in a hotel. Another small miracle. She says Olivier and his family might come over for dinner one night while I'm there. No promises, but it's being discussed. I'm trying not to hope too much, to take whatever comes with gratitude. Ryan reached out again recently. A Facebook message of all things. He's engaged to someone new, wanted to clear the air before moving on with his life. I deleted the message without responding. That chapter is closed. I wish him well, I suppose, in the abstract way you might wish a stranger well. But I have no desire to reconnect, to revisit that time in my life. Charlie and I have settled into a comfortable routine in our apartment. Morning walks in the park, work at the shelter, quiet evenings at home. I've made the place my own finally, with plants in the windows, art on the walls, books on the shelves. A home, not just a place, to exist. I even hosted a small dinner party last month, Patricia and a few other friends. The first time I've entertained since before the divorce. It felt good, normal. My therapist says I've made remarkable progress, that not everyone who goes through what I did comes out the other side with this level of insight or healing. I don't know about that. It doesn't feel remarkable to me. Just necessary. The alternative was to drown in regret, and I couldn't do that to my children. They deserved a mother who took responsibility for her actions, who worked to become someone they could respect again, even if they never fully trusted me. I went back home, as planned, to collect my things from the house before it sold. Standing in the foyer felt surreal. So familiar, yet so strange. The furniture was different in places. Diane's touch visible in new curtains, different artwork. But underneath it was still the home where I'd raised my children, where I'd lived most of my adult life. Guillaume wasn't there. He'd arranged to be out, giving me privacy, avoiding the awkwardness of watching me go through the remnants of our shared life. Amelia was with me, though, helping me sort through boxes Guillaume had prepared. My grandmother's recipe box, just as I remembered it. Wedding photos, baby albums. My mother's quilt, carefully preserved. As we worked, Amelia told me about her pregnancy, 4 months along. They weren't telling everyone yet, but she wanted me to know. Another grandchild on the way. A girl this time. I hugged her carefully, joy mixing with the bittersweet feeling of standing in what used to be my home, packing up memories while my daughter shared news of a future I would be allowed to witness, but from a distance. Dad says you can take anything else you want, Amelia told me. He's downsizing anyway. I looked around at the house that was no longer mine. Just the personal things, I said. The rest belongs to this chapter of his life, with Diane. Amelia studied me. You've really changed, Mom. Had to, I replied. The alternative was too painful. We finished packing the car, and as we were about to leave, Guillaume's car pulled into the driveway. I froze, uncertain whether to stay or go. He got out, Diane remaining in the passenger seat, and approached us. "I thought you might still be here," he said. "Did you find everything?" "Yes," I said. "Thank you for saving it all." He nodded, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I've been thinking about Lucas, and now with Amelia's baby coming, I think we should try to be more civil for family events." "I'd like that," I said carefully. "Not friends," he clarified, "but family, in a way, for the grandchildren." I nodded, emotion making speech difficult. "Thank you," I managed. He hesitated, then added, "You look well, Vivian. Portland seems to agree with you." "I'm better," I said honestly. "Not perfect, but better." He almost smiled then. "None of us are perfect." He glanced back at Diane waiting patiently in the car. "Just doing our best." That night at Amelia's, Olivier and his family came for dinner, as she'd hoped. Lucas, now crawling, scooted around the living room getting into everything. I sat on the floor with him, building block towers for him to knock down, his laughter the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Olivier watched us play, his expression unreadable. Later, as they were leaving, he paused by my chair. "We're having a birthday party for Lucas next month. Just family. You could come if you want." Simple words that meant the world. "I'd like that very much," I said. "Good," he replied with a nod. Not warm, but real. A doorway cracked open. I flew back to Portland, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. The damage I'd caused couldn't be undone. But because repair was possible. Healing was happening, slowly, in its own way. Back home, I threw myself into preparing for the animal shelter's annual fundraiser, coordinating volunteers, arranging donations, planning the event. Purposeful work that made a difference. Charlie limped alongside me at the shelter, our unofficial mascot, greeting visitors with his gentle enthusiasm. Lucas's birthday party was everything I could have hoped for, held in Olivier's backyard. Simple decorations, a small group of family. Guillaume and Diane were there, of course, enjoying their role as grandparents. I kept to the periphery, helping where needed, not pushing myself forward, grateful to be included. As Lucas smashed his hands into his birthday cake, his face covered. In frosting, everyone laughed. A normal family moment, the kind I thought I'd never experience again. Olivier caught my eye across the yard and actually smiled. A real smile, not forced. I smiled back, careful not to make too much of it, to give him space. Later, as I was helping clean up, Guillaume approached me. "Amelia says you've been volunteering at an animal shelter." "Working." "There now?" I corrected gently. "I started as a volunteer but was hired last year." He nodded. "Good. That's good. Awkward but trying. You always loved animals." "I do," I agreed. "It's fulfilling work." We stood there uncomfortably for a moment before he spoke again. "The house sold. Over asking price." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "You and Diane must be pleased." "We are. Found a nice condo downtown, moving next month." He hesitated. "Listen, Vivienne, I wanted to say, I'm glad you're doing better. For the kids' sake, for the grandkids." "Thank you," I said softly. "I'm trying." "I know," he acknowledged. "We all see that." His words stayed with me as I flew back to Portland. We all see that. Recognition of my efforts, my changes. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. It was more than I'd ever expected to receive. Patricia was waiting at the airport to drive me home. "How was it?" she asked as we claimed my luggage. "Healing," I said. "A little more each time." As we drove through the rainy Portland streets, I looked out at the city that had become my refuge, my place of rebuilding. Not where I'd expected to be at this stage of my life, but where I needed to be. The mistakes that brought me here couldn't be undone, but their consequences weren't the end of my story. When we reached my apartment, Charlie greeted me with exuberant joy, as if I'd been gone for months instead of days. I buried my face in his soft fur, grateful for his uncomplicated love. Patricia helped me bring in my bags, stayed for a cup of tea. We sat on my small balcony watching the rain, talking about everything and nothing. "You seem different," she observed. "Lighter somehow." "I feel it," I admitted, "like maybe the worst is behind me." "God has a way of bringing beauty from ashes," she said. Not preachy, just her truth. I thought about Guillaume's civil conversation, Olivier's invitation, Amelia's growing closeness, Lucas's sticky birthday cake hands. New memories being created alongside the painful ones. "Yes," I agreed. "I think you're right." That night, I added a new photo to my refrigerator, Lucas with his birthday cake, surrounded by family. I was in the background, slightly out of focus but undeniably present, part of the picture again, even if not in the center. It was enough. More than enough. 5 years have passed since I left my family for Ryan. 5 years of rebuilding, repenting, and slow reconciliation. I'm still in Portland, still working at the animal shelter, though I was promoted to director last year when my predecessor retired. Charlie, my 3-legged companion, is gray around the muzzle now, but still greets me each morning with the same enthusiastic joy. My small apartment has become a true home. Plants flourish on every windowsill, photographs line the walls, not just of my grandchildren, but of memories I've made in this new chapter. Weekend hikes with Patricia and our shelter volunteers. Fundraising events that have grown more successful each year. Even a few tentative family gatherings where I was included not out of obligation, but with genuine welcome. Lucas is 5 now, a bundle of energy and curiosity. He calls me Grandma Vivi, a nickname Amelia started that somehow stuck. Amelia's daughter Sophie just turned 4, bright and determined like her mother, with my auburn hair, a genetic echo that makes my heart swell whenever I see it. Theo and his wife welcomed twins last year, a boy and a girl. 4 grandchildren when I once feared I might never meet even one. The memories of my time with Ryan have faded, becoming less painful, more like a cautionary tale I tell myself when I'm tempted to take shortcuts in life. I heard he got married, divorced again, and moved to Arizona. Patricia says I should pray for him. Sometimes I do, though it's more for the person I was with him than for Ryan himself. Last month, something unexpected happened. Guillaume called me directly, not through the kids, not by email. His voice on the phone was startling, familiar yet strange after all this time. "Vivian," he said, "I need to talk to you about something important. Are you free next weekend?" My heart raced. With anxiety. Is everything all right? The kids? The grandchildren? "Everyone's fine," he assured me quickly. "It's nothing bad. Just something I need to discuss in person." I agreed to fly down. Amelia offered her guest room, but I booked a hotel instead, wanting to give myself space if the conversation with Guillaume proved difficult. 5 years of healing didn't erase the memory of his justified anger, his harsh words the last time we'd had a real conversation. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Guillaume looked good, relaxed in retirement. Diane wasn't with him. He ordered for both of us, remembering how I take my coffee, a small detail that shouldn't have affected me, but did. "Thank you for coming," he said once we were seated. "This is a bit awkward." "Most things between us are," I replied with a small smile. He nodded acknowledgement. "Fair enough. Look, Vivian, I've been doing some estate planning. With 4 grandchildren now, and the possibility of more, I wanted to get everything in order." I tensed. unsure where this was going. Our divorce had been final for years, all assets divided, albeit unfairly at the time given my eagerness to be free. My financial advisor pointed out something I hadn't considered, he continued. If something happens to me, Diane is provided for, of course. But I've accumulated additional savings since our divorce, and I've been thinking about the bigger picture, our family legacy. I waited, still confused about why this required an in-person conversation. The thing is, he said, meeting my eyes, directly, you're still the mother of my children, the grandmother of my grandchildren. Despite everything that happened, that hasn't changed. I swallowed hard. No, it hasn't. I'm updating my will to include provisions for you, he said. Not a major portion, but enough to ensure you're secure, for the grandkids' sake, so you can be part of their lives without financial strain. I stared at him, stunned. Of all the things I'd imagined this conversation might be about, this wasn't even on the list. Guillaume, I don't know what to say. That's incredibly generous, but unnecessary. I'm doing fine now. I know, he said. The kids tell me you're doing well, but this isn't really about need. It's about family, about acknowledging your place in it, despite everything. Tears filled my eyes. After what I did to you, to us, I don't deserve this. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe not. But the grandchildren deserve a grandmother who isn't struggling, who can be present for birthdays and graduations without counting pennies. And maybe I needed to do this for myself too, to fully let go. Let go? I echoed. Of the anger, he clarified. It's been 5 years, Vivian. Life is too short to hold on to bitterness forever. I wiped away tears. Have you told Diane about this? Of course, he said. It was partly her idea, actually. She's a remarkable woman. Yes, I agreed sincerely. She is. We talked for another hour, the most real conversation we'd had since before the divorce. About the grandchildren mostly, comparing notes on their personalities, their quirks. As we were getting ready to leave, he hesitated. There's one more thing, he said. Olivier and his wife are hosting Thanksgiving this year. Everyone will be there. They asked me to see if you'd be willing to come. Not as a guest, but as family. I couldn't speak for a moment. All of you want that? Even Olivier? It was his idea, Guillaume said. He thinks it's time. Flying back to Portland, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. There were still awkward moments, still careful boundaries. But because something fundamental had shifted, I wasn't just being tolerated anymore. I was being welcomed back, not to the same place I'd occupied before, but to a new place, one I'd earned through years of humble consistency. Patricia was waiting when I got home, curious about the mysterious summons from my ex-husband. When I told her about our conversation, the invitation to Thanksgiving, she hugged me tightly. God's timing is perfect, she said. You've done the work, Vivian. You've shown up consistently for 5 years without expectations, without demands. That's what healing looks like. I thought about my therapist's words from years ago, about forgiveness being a process, not an event, about how reconnection might not look like what I expected. She was right. This slow, sometimes painful journey back to family had taken a form I couldn't have predicted. Thanksgiving was beautiful and chaotic in the way only family gatherings can be. All 4 grandchildren running wild through Olivier's house, Amelia and her husband debating politics with Theo, Guillaume and Deanne helping in the kitchen, and me, setting the table with my daughter-in-law, being trusted with family, china that had once been mine. Lucas attached himself to my side for much of the day, showing me his toys, his books, asking questions about when his father was little. Sophie wanted me to braid her hair, like Mommy said you used to do for her. The twins, still too young for much interaction, were content to be passed around from lap to lap, accepting my cuddles as readily as anyone else's. After dinner, when the little ones were in bed and the adults gathered in the living room with coffee and pie, Olivier cleared his throat. "I have something to say," he announced. My stomach tightened with instinctive anxiety, but his face was relaxed, his voice steady. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he said, "especially you, Mom." Mom, not Vivienne, not my mother. Mom. I felt tears threatening again. "The past few years haven't been easy for any of us," he continued. "But family is family. Through good decisions and bad ones, through mistakes and forgiveness. I've watched you rebuild yourself, Mom. I've seen your consistency, your humility, your willingness to accept whatever terms we set for your relationship. With our children, I just wanted to be in your lives," I said softly. "On any terms." He nodded. "I know. And that's why we're all here today. Because you proved year after year that you meant it, that we could trust your presence again." Guillaume raised his coffee mug. "To family," he said simply. "Imperfect, complicated, but ours." We all echoed the toast. To family. Later, as I was helping clear the dessert plates, Guillaume's wife, Diane, joined me in the kitchen. We'd developed a cordial relationship over the years, but had never been alone together for any length of time. "That was quite a moment," she said, rinsing a plate. "It was," I agreed. "I never expected this level of reconciliation. I hoped, but I didn't expect it." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, when Guillaume and I first started dating, I was wary of you. The ex-wife is always a complicated figure, but especially given your history." I nodded, accepting the implied criticism. "I understand that. But watching you these past few years, the way you've conducted yourself, the way you've respected boundaries while remaining present, it's been impressive," she admitted. "Not everyone could do what you've done, Vivienne. Not everyone would have the strength to face the consequences of their actions with such grace." "I didn't have much choice," I said. "I couldn't lose them entirely. They're my heart, even when—" I was too blind to see it. "You had a choice," she countered. "You could have moved away completely, started fresh somewhere no one knew your story. You could have played the victim, turned the children against their father. You could have given up when reconciliation seemed impossible. But you didn't." Her words hit me hard. She was right. There had been choices, and I'd made different ones the second time around. "Thank you for seeing that," I said finally. "And thank you for your part in today. I know this couldn't have happened without your support." She smiled. "Family is complicated, but worth it." That night, back in my hotel room, I looked through the photos I'd taken during the day. My family, all together, with me included. Not at the margins anymore, but woven back into the fabric of their lives. Not in the same way as before, but in a new way that acknowledged both our painful history and our healing present. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 years ago, so desperate for excitement, for validation, that I'd thrown away everything that mattered. How distant she seemed now, almost unrecognizable. I thought about Ryan, the fantasy he'd represented, the emptiness behind the passion. And I thought about Guillaume, steady and dependable, qualities I'd once mistaken for boring but now recognized as the foundation of real love. My phone pinged with a text from Amelia, a photo of Sophie, fast asleep clutching the stuffed bunny. I'd brought her with a simple message. "She says Grandma Vivi gives the best presents. We all had a wonderful day. Love you, Mom." 3 simple words I'd once feared I might never hear again. Love you, Mom. I held the phone to my heart, overwhelmed with gratitude for second chances. for the family that had found a way to make room for me again. The next morning, before my flight back to Portland, I met Guillaume for breakfast. His suggestion. Another surprise. We talked about Christmas plans, about Theo's possible job promotion, about Lucas starting kindergarten next year. Normal conversation, the kind ex-spouses who've found peace might have. As we were finishing, he said casually, "I was thinking, it might be easier for you to visit if you had a place here. Not full-time, just a small condo maybe, for extended stays." I looked at him skeptically. "Are you trying to manage my finances now, Guillaume?" He laughed, a genuine laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "No, just thinking practically. Hotel costs add up, and with 4 grandchildren, you'll probably be visiting more often." "I'll consider it," I said. "But I'm established in Portland now. Friends, my job, Charlie." "Of course," he agreed. "I'm not suggesting you move back permanently. Just a home base here for visits. Think about it." I did think about it, all the way back to Portland. A physical representation of my place in the family again. Not the same place, but a new one that acknowledged both my past mistakes and my current reality. Charlie greeted me with his usual enthusiasm when I got home, Patricia having dropped him off just before my arrival. My small apartment welcomed me back, cozy and familiar. I put my suitcase away, sorted through mail, settled back into my routine, but with something new lodged in my heart. Hope, not just for occasional connection with my family, but for genuine integration back into their lives. That weekend, I took Charlie to the dog park despite the November chill. As he hobbled happily among the other dogs, I chatted with the regular Saturday morning crowd, people who knew nothing about my past, who accepted me as the shelter director with the 3-legged lab. Patricia joined me, bringing coffee. "So," she said, settling beside me on the bench, "what happens now?" "Now?" I repeated. "Now I keep doing what I've been doing, showing up, being present, earning trust day by day." "And the condo idea?" she prompted. I smiled. "Maybe, eventually. If it feels right?" She nodded approval. "One step at a time, that's how you got here." Looking at Charlie playing with a young retriever, I felt a sense of profound gratitude for this life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of my mistakes. Not the life I'd planned, not the life I'd once had, but something new and meaningful nonetheless. My mother's words came back to me, "The grass is greener where you water it." I understood it now in a way I never had before. The slow, patient work of nurturing what matters, the daily choice to show up, to care, to commit. Not the flashy excitement of new passion, but the deeper joy of earned connection. That evening, I called Amelia. "I've been thinking about Guillaume's suggestion," I said, "about getting a small place there for visits." "What do you think?" she asked. "I think I'd like to be closer to all of you," I admitted. "Not moving back completely, but having a foot in both worlds." "We'd like that too, Mom," she said. "Sophie asks about you all the time. And now that the twins are getting bigger, Theo was saying it would be nice if you could spend more time with them." "I'd love that," I said, my voice catching. "You know," Amelia said thoughtfully, "I was so angry with you for so long. I couldn't understand how you could throw everything away like that." "I couldn't either," I said honestly. "Not really. Not until long after. But watching you these past 5 years, how hard you've worked to make amends, to rebuild trust, it's taught me something important," she continued. "About forgiveness, about redemption, about the fact that one terrible choice doesn't have to define a person forever." "Thank you for giving me the chance to show you that," I said, tears flowing freely now. "Thank you for not giving up on us, Mom," she replied, "even when we made it so hard." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony with Charlie at my feet, watching the Portland skyline in the gathering dusk. My life had taken a turn I never could have predicted 6 years ago. The painful consequences of my choices had led, through a long and difficult journey, to a place of unexpected grace. Not perfection. There were still awkward moments, still careful conversations, still boundaries to respect. But family. Real, messy, complicated family. Mine again, in a new way, because I'd finally learned what real love looks like. Not the intoxicating rush of new passion, but the steady, enduring commitment to show up day after day, to water the grass where I stood, instead of jumping the fence for greener pastures. As night fell over the city, I sent a group text to my children with a photo from Thanksgiving, all of us together around Olivier's table. "Thankful for second chances," I wrote. "Thankful for all of you." The responses came quickly, heart emojis. From Amelia. "Same, Mom." From Theo. And finally, from Olivier, who had taken the longest road to forgiveness. Family is forever. Even when it's hard. Love you, Mom. Family is forever. A truth I'd forgotten once, but would never forget again.